The Nissan Nation podcast is a presentation of DRB and KGB Media.
Recorded live, coast to coast, it's the Nissan Nation podcast. From camping, racing, and all points in between. The NNP is your Nissan Nation podcast. Now start your engines and welcome in the hosts, David and Danny.
What is going on, Nissan Nation? From all things Nissan here in Middle Tennessee to wherever you're listening to, this is the Nissan Nation podcast, and we have our special guest, Jason Hoffman, on. What is up?
How are you, buddy?
So Jason, how in the hell have you been, man? I like your podcast studio that you're doing this from, man. It's I don't even have the cool background you do, man. I've got a blank wall kind of behind me with a little lame picture, and you've got curtains. You've got the whole deal, man.
I'm in my cave here. I end up doing a lot of recording from the Toyota Trucks and Trails mobile studio here. So yet again another episode coming from this fine confined space that I'm in that produces such amazing audio quality.
And you've got that Toyota money over there. That's why you got a mobile studio, right? I'm the fifth monkey on the chain. So
yeah, we'll go with that. We'll go with that.
So, dude, we both had a killer year. This is, I think, my third year doing this, and this is kind of your second full year.
Yep, bringing year number 2 to an end. Yep.
And I know we've both seen like great growth. Not the kind of, normally guys don't like talking about growths and stuff, but for a podcast show, I think we've both done pretty well this year, man.
Yeah, I've been keeping up with my show and the downloads and that kind of stuff all year, and we have seen incredible growth this year to the point of actually nearly, if not doubling the number of downloads from the first year, and that is that's awesome. I'm hoping that means that we're picking up new listeners, and old listeners aren't just listening to the same episodes over and over for some crazy reason. I hope we're picking up new people that are being reflected in those numbers, and not some crazy weird thing happening.
It almost sounded like you said nude people, and I was like, man, is there a trick to podcasting that I don't know about?
Not that I'm aware of.
I was like, man, that nude listenership, man, it's really what brought us over the top, and I don't have that, I guess. So yeah, like Jason was saying, man, we're just kind of doing a year in review, and why not do them together, man? We're both brothers from another mother kind of thing. We both love the imports. I've owned Toyota, so I guess I can legitimately. I've been on your show once or twice before, but I guess I can legitimately be that guy for a minute,
Yeah, I've mentioned on the podcast many times, and we've had you on the show before. You do a lot for Toyota Trucks and Trails, probably not probably, but definitely far more than I do for your podcast. But you're a big part of the show, even if it's just behind the scenes a lot of times. But I've told you before and told the listeners before, if it wasn't for you, I probably wouldn't be doing the podcast at all. So,
well, sorry about that, listeners. Oh man, no, and we'll get into it in a little bit about the unique partnership we have. But of course, like you told people, I helped you get into this a little bit. And, of course, Dan Cole with the 4x4 podcast helped me get into it. And it was something I wanted to do, and it was something you wanted to do. And I consider you a great friend, and it's weird how just our shows have kind of brought that together,
Yeah, it started out over podcasting, and over time we figured out personally that we have a little bit more in common than just doing podcasts and off-roading and that kind of stuff. So it's been a cool progression for both of us in that aspect anyway.
Right. And I have to say, man, I'll never forget. I think Dan Cole said, "Hey man, there's this guy wanting to do a podcast and is Toyotas or something." I forget what he told me. He's like, "Do you care if I give him your number?" And I was like, "No, dude, I don't care." And you know, at first I kind of thought, well, Dan's just trying to put this guy on me, and I don't know why, you know. And then it was like, then Jason called, and I was kind of like, okay, you know, and it was awkward just because, you know, two guys that never know each other, like, calling is like, I'm not calling some parts company trying to buy something, and you're not calling it. And I remember and then like Jason, I forget, our first phone call I think was pretty short. But then they just kept coming, and I think our phone call the other night was like 3.5 hours. We're just
something like that. Yeah, we had one of those epic conversations where we, you know, we talked about all the world's problems, but I don't think we solved any of them by any stretch.
No, and thank God long distance doesn't count anymore, man. we'd both be racking those up, man.
Well, we figured out that Lars from Metallica is an awesome drummer, and we both agree on that. So
that's right. And did you get to? And I'll say to our listeners, did you get a chance to listen to that interview I was talking about?
I have not taken time to do that.
For our listeners, both good and bad, if you like musician interviews, because me and Jason, we're both ex-musicians, just nuts. And if you will get on YouTube and search Lars Art and a Dave Grohl podcast interview, whatever, dude, it's only 45 minutes, but it's a fun interview. So that's a little shout out, Jason.
That works.
I think they call that in the biz the shout out. I don't know.
I don't think that Lars or Dave probably, you know, need us to promote their get together, but you know, what the hey, we'll do what we can to help them out, you know.
Well, I'm expecting my phone to ring any minute now from those guys saying thanks for that shout out.
Yeah, big thank you. I'll let them just call you, and you can share it with me. So
I'll be sure to record it though. So kind of where we'll kick this off for me. Of course, I'm a fan of your show. Like you said, I kind of helped you get it going, but I'm just a fan of after getting to know you a little bit, and it's like, well, you gotta love your friends and what they do, man. And of course, I've owned Toyotas, and some things you guys get deep into Toyota, and me, Nissan guy, I'm like, I don't know what they're talking about. So I'll listen. I'm learning something, I think. But kind of before we get into January, Jason, I know your first year, man, you spiked pretty good your first year, but kind of getting into your second year, what was your goals for the show?
Mainly just to continue to see some kind of growth, and to work on getting the best interviews that I could. I've said all along doing this that I am by no means an expert on Toyotas or trucks or wheeling. You know, Rich and I, neither one are.
I'm screwing with Jason right now on video. Sorry, man. You know the drill. You know, you listen to my show. I got to screw with people.
I do. Not necessarily accustomed to it, but I know how it works. But anyway, just seeing growth and just trying to just improve the podcast from all aspects, and you know, make it a more enjoyable experience for the listeners, and try to provide them with the best content that we possibly could, and that kind of stuff. And I think we've accomplished that. We may have a long way to go in some areas, but I think we've gotten better in a lot of ways too. So, well,
I know from listening from show one, man, like, of course, everybody's first shows, you're just kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing, you know. But it's like, it's definitely I know for us, for me and Danny, year two, it just seemed like it starts kicking in. You kind of course, we're both truck heavy. I mean, you're all trucks, but we're pretty truck heavy show. But you kind of start feeling your groove, and you get on kind of a recording schedule for this is for us. I know how it worked. And yeah, year two, man, you're like, where can we go now? Now I feel like I have it. Till you get one of those emails that go, guys, what do you guys ever make sense of what you're talking about? Every once in a while we'll get an email of like, what are you what is this show? So have you guys gotten anything? I mean, I know you get a lot of feedback. So
Honestly, we have the best listeners of any podcast on the planet, in my opinion. we get nothing but positive feedback. Early on, we got some. I won't even call it negative feedback, just constructive criticism on the audio quality and that kind of stuff. And I couldn't even argue with anybody. It was painful to listen to, but we've worked on that, and the longtime listeners know that at some point this past year, I don't even remember how many episodes back at this point, but just kind of turned that stuff over to you, and the audio quality has been tenfold better since then. So
I can tell you, it was episode 43, Jason.
Okay, awesome.
I made a note, sir.
glad you got that locked down, buddy.
I was going through my notes and going back over your show and stuff, and I was like, when did I start doing that? And the only reason I know is you made an official announcement on episode 44, but on episode 43, that's when we redid your intro and stuff. And
That's right.
And I was listening back because I skimmed through after making my notes. I'm skimming through your episodes just a little bit, and I was like, man, I did do this show. I do remember this now. But no, hey man, I appreciate you you having the faith in me to do that, and of course, I this year have started what's called DRB and KGB Media, and I'm just kind of all my websites and everything. I'm just trying to focus everything into one deal, and I'm happy that you're kind of a part of the family. Even though you're your own deal, you're still a part of the family, and we appreciate you having faith in us.
Well, we appreciate what you do for the show, and I don't want to get into a huge butt kissing contest here, but
come on, I have a big butt, man.
You've always been supportive, and it means a lot to Rich and I both to have your support and that kind of stuff. So,
well, so what do you want to do, man? Let's get into this.
Well, yeah, let's get into this. We've been talking about my show. What's been going on with the Nissan Nation podcast? What things have you guys kind of experienced from year 1 to year 2?
Well, let's see. We're in year 3, Jason. So I feel I'm almost insulted. If I had feelings, they would have been hurt right there, buddy.
Well, you guys have been at it so long, I've just lost track of the longevity. I mean, it's just you're just a staple in the community now. So
yeah, I see that in the ratings. We're such a staple, a staple at the bottom. Damn Nissan! Come on, more people like Nissan. Come on, hey Toyota guys, you're listening. Come on, like some Nissan, man. But no, man, we our biggest thing, I try to do at least a trip a year to go somewhere, and it seems like the first year we went to Gone Moab, which is for the Toyota guys. It was like the Super Bowl of Nissan events for a while. It was out in Moab, Utah, in May or whatever that is, Labor Day, Memorial Day, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, dude, I'm a retard, man. I can't get any of that right, but so. Yeah, so we made it out there, and we did our first live show from there that first year, and we were like, man, we're going to do, then we did my event, Windrock, and we were like, man, we really want to take this show, and we have these big plans to go for year 2, and it's like, we do the same 2 things. Oh, and I went to L.A., and we did a car show, and you talk about, like, for a duck out of water, man, that for cars, I love cars, and I know a lot about cars, but the tuner scene was like killer. And so then jumping into year 3, we were like, we need to take the show some other places, man, so I didn't do Moab this year. Danny did a solo episode, which was honestly, Danny's solo was my most popular show, Jason, by far. I don't know how to take that, but I'm happy that we did a big episode, but also I'm like, well, I wasn't really in that one.
I don't know that it was so much, you and I have talked about this before. I don't know if it was so much because Danny did it solo or if it was just because it was a Moab episode for you. That's, we've talked about it in the past, and I don't know how much you want your listeners to know about this, but that's always been kind of your peak episode of the year for whatever reason. I don't know if it's just because there's so many Nissan fans that attend that event that
Well, the roaches come out of the woodwork around May.
Is that how it works?
I think so.
Well, I don't think it was because you weren't there. I think it's because that's always your big episode of the year. So
no, and that doesn't bother me at all. Danny was nervous as can be, and my hat's off to Dan Amigo, man. He did a killer show, man. He had a bunch of lively people, but so I was saying we wanted to get out more. So, and you talked to these guys, the Rogue Overland crew. They invited me and Danny to do one of their 4 or 5 day runs. I forget how many days we were out, and I flew into Vegas. I literally was picked up an hour later. We were headed towards Black Bear, man, in Colorado, and Ouray and Silverton and all those places. And after that, we did Went again, and then I got to go down to Atlanta this year, so that was cool. And what were you guys? I know you guys met up twice this year, 3 times.
Yeah, Rich and I made it to 2 of the same events this year. It was really cool getting to hang out. I made it up to his event, the FJ Northeaster Run, in April of last year, and then he came down for our event down at Windrock this year, Great Smoky Mountain Trail Ride, in May, and we had actually planned on trying to make a couple of more events throughout the year. Where we could meet up together, and individually we both hit a ton of events this year, but just not anything that we could get together on and yeah. Be at the same event at the same time.
Well, I mean, I know I was like I said, going through my notes, man. Rich was all over the country this year, man. He did you want to say the trifecta, but I guess it's a double. I don't know what for double. Like both of the expos, west and east, man. I mean, that's like. Those are the Super Bowl of kind of the overland outdoorsy thing.
Yeah, he got to do a lot of traveling this year, and not all of it was podcast related. That he's got other obligations and definitely other reasons to attend events. But he got to get out and do a lot of cool stuff and shake hands and
kiss babies,
and all that kind of fun stuff. So.
Man,
I know
the mayor of FJville there, buddy.
Do what now?
Rich is the mayor of FJville.
FJville, yeah. But hopefully, he stayed pretty wore out, I think, most of the year. But hopefully, he'll get recovered and be ready to do it all again next year and get out and do that same kind of stuff.
Well, okay, so January, I'm going to look at your January, man. So speaking of big deals, I got friended by this guy, man, and I was like, and this has been like 3 years ago or more. Bake FJ. It was crazy, man. I was like, because at the time I really wasn't connected to the Toyota world, and I was like, well, who is this guy, man? And just watching his adventures and the crazy things he does, and of course you got to know him a little bit in year 1 you got to interview him a little bit.
Yeah, I interviewed him once or twice in the first year of the podcast, and then he had an update right after the first of the year this year. So
yeah, he had a big update, didn't he?
Yeah, the Bakes FJ kind of came to an end.
Or what, on its top?
Yeah. He ended up. He was on some bad roads out west, out in Oregon, and ended up putting his beloved FJ on its lid out there, and pretty much did it in. But for the listeners of the podcast, if you listen on a regular basis, you know that FJ has actually been resurrected, which I thought was kind of a cool story. I'm glad.
Right. Which you get to, you got into that, I think, towards the end of the year a little bit, right?
Yeah. Baker came back on the show and talked about all that, and kind of filled the listeners in on what was going on with it and that kind of stuff. I thought that was pretty cool. So. Right.
And of course, that's for you Nissan guys, that was episode 31 of those guys. And also, like Rich does a lot of training and stuff too, and I know he was at Ouray in North Carolina, doing some training. Because he does tread lightly stuff and
Yeah, he's a boy, Rich, don't shoot me if I don't get this right. A tread lightly master tread trainer, and he is also a trainer for the International Four-Wheel Drive Association. I think is the right term for that.
Right.
But yes, he is a off-road trainer. So,
well, you guys. I mean, of course, you talk. You guys talk a good deal of off road, but listening to that stuff was super interesting to me because, y'all have had episodes in the past where y'all discussed the high lift jack and stuff, man, into like great detail, and sometimes I've listened to some car podcasts where they start talking about like bits and pieces and differentials and stuff, and I kind of get like I don't know where, but you guys. With the tech talk on that especially was super interesting. So Nissan guys, go listen to that.
Well, you guys get into your share of that too. You there for a while. We're even having a segment on every episode where you tried to give some technical advice or tech tips and that kind of stuff. And yeah. I don't know that you so much do it anymore, but I enjoyed it when you guys were doing it anyway. So. Well,
yeah, we had a partnership with Nistech Lifts, and we were trying to do some fun things like that. Yeah, I think we discussed. I know. Year one we discussed oil changing, which was super creepy when Danny discusses an oil change because. Yeah, but we went into. Talking coils, and I know we did what's called the Titan swap. We talked about that a little bit, and those are fun. We also had the Bear Truth on a little bit. Miss Cara Bear, she trying to get her back on, man. She has some fun, angry things to talk about every once.
I enjoyed those episodes too. I was going to ask you whether she was going to be making any more appearances. On your show or not? Because I always enjoyed that.
Yeah, Miss Kara, she's in the Colorado area, and much like it's hard for me and Danny to get our routines together. Sometimes me and Kara, it's hard to get our schedules together. That, and everybody's got families and stuff, and she can only be pissed off at certain things, man. When it's a feel. When the feel is right, the bare truth comes out.
I understand completely.
So, anything from the spring that kind of caught your eye that we might have done? I know Moab, obviously, and we don't get the big name interviews like you do, Jason. We interview people, but it's not like you guys get, man. Because what you had, let's see. Of course, you talked bakes. Let's see, y'all did some stuff with Firestone. Let's see, you had a tire deal that you got to do. And then there's this little guy named Ivan Stewart you got to talk to, man.
Well, that was a little later in the year, but
well, yeah, but like the names keep dropping. I keep seeing these people that I recognize, man, like Marlon Crawler and all these people, and I'm like. I remember talking to you going, Jason, how do I... Oh, wait, there's nobody like that in Nissan. Damn.
Well, I think there is. They're out there. They just have to be reached. And
we got to find those guys.
I think, for us, some of it was pure luck. Some of it was determination and just... like I said earlier on, just trying to provide the best content that we can for our listeners, and not punishing them episode in and out with just Rich and I droning on about whatever it is we choose to talk about.
But you guys have a lot of vehicles to talk about, man.
That I do, and
yeah, you especially.
I try not to bring that up too terrible much, and you
don't like to brag about your fleet of vehicles.
Well, it's not bragging. It's more out of embarrassment that I'm home a couple of days a month and I own as many vehicles as I do. It's really it's kind of foolish, but I have a passion for each one of them individually for their own given reasons. And
I get that. I get that. Well, we did in February, man. We did what we called Google Live Part 2, and I don't know if you remember that one or not, Jason. We podcasts are funny, man. Some of it's scripted, some of it's not. I try to. My Nissan guys, I try to sound professional sometimes and like have topics and stuff to talk about. But then there's that after the Detroit Auto Show, sometimes there's a lot to talk about, and then sometimes it's crickets in automotive land. And so me and Danny were like, I don't know what we're going to discuss. Let's just put us on Google Live, and if people want to hop in, they hop in, man.
I remember that, and I was hoping that you guys would do more of that. I know that some of that has gotten a little bit complicated to, as far as technically complicated to make it all work. But you guys kind of went out on a lot of branches early in the year. You did tried doing some Facebook Live, podcasts or Facebook Live while you were podcasting and stuff like that early in the year. And
we did.
I always thought that kind of stuff was really cool, and really wish that Rich and I would branch out into that stuff a little bit more.
Well, we got to get you. Maybe Toyota guys are just too uptight. Is that what you're saying? You got to branch out a little bit, man.
Well, I wouldn't say the community as a whole is. I'm just saying that, and I'm not saying I'm uptight by any stretch. I'm saying I'm a moron when it comes to technology. So,
hey, dude, it's us throwing darts sometimes. Sometimes you're just like, please, something hit. Something push us up the podcast charts. But yeah, so, and I like, of course, for us too, we got the biggest, the one of the fun topics we get to talk about is like when people modify their vehicles. And we had in episode 49, we had Brennan Becker, who was the guy who put this V8, the Titan V8, in the midsize Frontier truck, man. And it's funny about that is how that's spreading to Australia now, and it's this guy from I believe it's Ohio is where he was from. That was honestly that was one of our bigger episodes, but. What I find funny is I was going through your stuff, and in April you had a solo show, man. And I remember you talking to me about, I guess I just got to be by myself and talk about something, man. How did you handle that?
It's always difficult, and I'm pretty sure in that episode I had an interview. I don't remember the exact episode number, but it's always easier when I have something pre-recorded in the can, so I don't have to fill the whole episode all at one time. But it always boils down to just jumping in and trying to put something together that's usable content. So I know you've done that a few times yourself.
Yeah, it's nerve-wracking. I don't know how like the especially political, well, I guess political talk shows, they always have something to talk about, but like, yeah, sometimes you hear like, of course, Howard Stern and those guys, they have people to bounce off of a little bit, but guys like that can do 20 minutes without, flinching. And me and you, we're sitting here at like 30 minutes going, yeah, no, I've given you everything I've got.
Yeah. I've got a list of notes here, and read through the notes, and you think, okay, that's got to be 20, 25 minutes. And, you look at the clock and it's, 2.5 minutes, 5 tops. You're like, oh wow, now what do I do?
Right. And have you ever just like really, like when you and Rich are talking, really kind of look down? I do this a lot, and once you get going, once you get in the show talking to your buddy, you forget about time. But I'll look down, and this is right when we're doing the beginning of the show, and you're like, okay, man, that was a good 10 minutes, and you look down and it was like 2:30, 2 minutes 30 seconds. You're like, what?
It happens all the time. Probably not on the listener's end. It probably feels like 20 minutes to them, but for us doing it, yeah, that sometimes that it seems like time is moving way faster than it is. But I think that's just part of carrying on a conversation. I mean, we mentioned earlier our epic that definitely didn't feel like it was after it was pointed out to both of us that we had been on the phone like a couple of teenage girls for hours at that
3.5 hours later. I literally I cooked a whole dinner. I cooked a dinner. I think King Kong was on the TV, played through, and of course I'm not paying attention, and then it just dawned on me. I'm like, man, there's another movie already on, and it's like, well, yeah, there's we're still on the phone.
Well, I guess maybe for me it was it seemed like it went by a lot slower than it did because all I do is drive, and I was driving at the time, so all I was doing was watching stuff flash by the windows when you probably had a life to get to, and it seemed like I was boring you to death. So
no, come on, man. You're driving, but I'm sitting at home going, man, is it bedtime yet? I can get up and go to work and do something. So no, it was a nice getaway out of my boring family life. So the Great Smoky Mountain Roundup, man. I remember listening to that a little bit. Can you explain exactly what that is a little bit?
Okay, first I have to correct you. It's a Great Smoky Mountain Trail ride.
Oh, sorry.
I will get hung by it.
Well, see, I did it. So
free with a short rope. So,
I said it wrong, so they can't hang you.
Okay, all right. Great Smoky Mountain Trail Ride is it's one of the oldest Toyota and Land Cruiser events east of the Mississippi River, actually east of the Rocky Mountains. This year was the 26th year.
Wow.
So it's been going on a long time, and the local TLCA chapter that I'm a member of has hosted and put on this event nearly from the beginning. There's been a few years where it got turned over to another chapter, but for the most part, we have taken care of that event from the get-go. And when I say we, I've only been a member of the chapter for 5 or 6 years, I guess, and so I'm not trying to include myself into something I wasn't a part of for sure, but it's been a very, very long running event, and one that I take a lot of pride in, obviously, because it's my chapter and my group of guys that handle the event, and we work our tails off every year to make it the best event that people can attend.
Well, and when I was listening back to episode 32 of that, like it's funny. I know you get nervous doing interviews a little, like one-on-one, like here's a mic in your face kind of thing, but I know you get to talk a chance on that one to talk to a few people there, right?
Actually, I didn't do any interviews there.
What? I must have been thinking of the year before or something.
Yeah, the year before we set up a few microphones after the event had kind of wrapped up on Saturday night, and gathered a bunch of guys around that had been around for a long time and attended the event for several years in the past, and you got them to sit down and tell some stories of past events and that kind of stuff. And the audio quality on that particular recording was horrible, which I feel bad about because those guys took the time to record it. But
I remember you asking me that time, going, "Hey, can you can you do anything with it?" Well, you ended up some guy in the UK fixed that for you, didn't they?
Yes. Yep. I sent a guy overseas. Sent him a copy of the file, and he did the best he could to clean it up. It still wasn't perfect, but he did the best he could with what he had to work with, and made it where it was at least releasable. So I felt like it was. But
yeah, I remember you doing that to me and scratching my head, scratching my head on that one, going, how bad do you want this?
Yeah, that was a epic screw up on my part. Again, folks, I've admitted many times that I am a technical illiterate. I don't always get this stuff, but I'm getting better as time goes by. So
don't shortchange yourself, man. You are a fine host, sir. I am proud to listen to your show.
Well, I will say this much. I like to think that I am I am a whole lot better at driving my Toyota than I am recording myself talking about it. So if that gives anybody any faith in what I do, hopefully that helps.
Well,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. You go ahead.
No, back to the event. It's again something that I take a lot of pride in, and something that I don't want it to ever come across like the podcast is just for that event or anything of the sort, but something that I will always put a lot of effort into covering that event, and hopefully get over some of my inhibitions about talking to people in person and that kind of stuff. And as time goes along, do an even better job of covering the event and kind of letting people know that people that can't be there know what it's all about, and maybe encourage some new folks to show up and check it out and just see what we got going on.
Right. And you got to be a homer for your event, man. I'm definitely a homer for mine, man. Of course, it's part of my media company now, but but you got to be a homer for your passion and your friends. And
right. Well, we've been talking about a lot of what I've got going on. Let's back up just a little bit. You've had a lot of stuff in that aspect between the podcast and some of your websites and that kind of stuff change this past year, with turning over some of your forums and that kind of stuff to different folks and moving things around and that kind of stuff. Do you want to talk about that just a little bit?
Yeah, we can, man. Yeah, I'm with a fifth-rate auto manufacturer, Nissan, and why not have the third-ranked auto forum for the Nissan Xterra? No, I kid. Yeah, I got rid of Xterra Nation in January, and it was the sad times. I'd always promised my my follow. I don't know how you would pronounce that. My friends that were on the forum, that if I were ever to feel it was time to back out of the forums, that I would not sell them to auto guides or any of those big chunky monkey people that like to swallow up forums, and I would give it away, and that I did. I give it to a Mr. Jay Anderfuren, and we got to talk with Jay a little bit about that, and he kind of let us in on some of the changes that he felt like needed to be, and that was a fun and sad time, man. It's just like the event, like I started, and when it's like you're starting to let go of control of things, it's always kind of like, oh, they're gonna mess up my little kid, man, my little baby, and I think they've done an admirable job of taking it, on to the next phase. I've had some failures, I had a Frontier one that I've basically shut down that didn't take off how I wanted to over the past few years, but I've had a lot of fun. I keep promising that I'm going to do a new forum for the Nissan Nation. If I can only find the time, Jason, like you see, you're driving, so like you can't do tech stuff as you're going down the road. So you have a great excuse of why you can't do it. I have an excuse called the remote control. And when I sit my butt on the TV and I just pushing up and down, and next thing you know, it's bedtime, man.
Well, you still seem to accomplish a lot. I mean, pardon me, you guys have been knocking out episodes of the podcast and that kind of stuff, and I'm sure that you're keeping busy within the world of Nissans.
Well, sometimes I was pretty busy with my Nissan. I got my 2000 Xterra on its feet, and it was rolling around. And about mid-year, it was starting to actually drive around a little bit on its own. And then, so yeah, I have been a little busy, but I gotta devote more time to my nation, man, my peoples.
Well, speaking of your vehicles, you got yourself into a new Nissan this year. Take a few minutes to talk about that, and I know you guys did an episode on it, and I'm sitting here looking through your episodes, trying to remember. You guys had talked about it in one episode, and I think by the next episode that you put out, you had a new vehicle.
I did, man. I bought myself a 2017 Titan, non-XD, just the normal old gas version. But yeah, we needed something that we could pull our vehicle around when we want to go take it to car shows or whatever, when it wasn't feasible to drive it there. And of course, Windrock for me is 225 miles or so, somewhere in there. I really didn't want to try to drive a straight axled Xterra, especially the first year of driving it around. I sure didn't want to go, hey, let me take it on a trip to maybe 500 miles or so round trip. So yeah, I needed something to pull, which was sad times because my beloved 2012 Frontier Pro 4X Betty White had to leave, man. And I'm still, honestly, Jason, I'm still sad about that, man, because I love that damn truck. But sometimes you got to do something, for the greater good. And so yeah, what was that? April or May is when I bought that truck.
That sounds about right. I was going to ask you what that was, how you felt about. I mean, I know it's exciting to get a new vehicle, but where you gave up your Frontier to get your Titan, you would put quite a bit of work into that Frontier. You had it lifted and some different things done to it here and there that had kind of personalized it and made it your own. What was it like? I mean, I guess you already said it was pretty tough to walk away from it, but
it's really tough when you see it riding around town. I do occasionally see that vehicle. And that's one of the toughest things. You're like, oh man, because I posted on our Facebook and stuff some wheeling stuff I did. My first trip at Windrock, I've always wheeled Xteras or Jeeps, so I wasn't used to that longer truck wheelbase. And my first, what trail was that? I forget. My first dip into the trail, man, I ripped the rear bumper off of it, just not even paying attention, just talking to my buddy that was with me. And I had a video of me smashing that back. And when you do stupid stuff like that to a vehicle, and then, of course, you repair it, and I put a new bumper on it, a new off-road bumper, so it wasn't going to happen again. But, yeah, you create memories. Those are stupid memories, and they're costly memories at times. And then there was the time when I was going up 22, and they had a big boulder in the way, and I've got video on our Facebook page of that, me trying to get through this boulder. And I just got the car back from a wheeling trip that may or may not have dented the door. And I just got it back, and we were up at Windrock, and I was like, I had to back down. I never had to back down a trail, Jason. And so there's memories like that with that truck. And, of course, the partnerships I had with, like, Nistec and stuff who helped me lift that, and then White Knuckle who helped me do some stuff with it, and then Heps Designs who helped me do some stuff with it. When you got to start ripping all that off, that's heartbreaking. You're like, man, these sliders, you see all the scrapes down the sides, and it was kind of heartbreaking. But then you're getting into a new smelly new vehicle, man, and there is nothing like opening the door to a new car smell. I don't know for you, man, but when you do that, it's just like, it's heaven. But eventually, heaven wears off, and payments kick in, and it's not as fun.
Yeah. That'll change a guy's perspective in a hurry. And I just want to throw in there, you had mentioned how tough it is to see that truck, roaming around town. I promise you what is much tougher than that is to trade a vehicle in and go by the dealer where you traded it in and see it sitting on the back row of their dealership, where all the less than desirable vehicles wind up. And it just sat there for 2 or 3 months, because that'll make you feel like, wow, I had a lot of pride in that particular vehicle, and nobody else wants it because it's still sitting there. So,
well, I will be honest. I did drive by the local Nissan dealership a few times and just kind of touched the truck, looked at it like, oh, I miss it. But what I don't miss though, and that was a Pro 4X, so it was leather and just dished out, man. This new Titan Pro 4X I got, man. Oh my God, it's like everything push button to make you happy. It's like the radio. There's satellite radio that works. There's heated seats and this heated steering. I mean, like you talk about like first world problems, man. The other day there was a little frost on it, and on the weekend I was going to take it out, and I was like, oh, this seat's a little cold, or this steering wheel's a little cold. Here, let me push this button. Oh, it's so much better. I feel so much better. But yeah, and instantly I took that truck off. I did my first Titan interview with Mr. Kevin Smith, the Smith Overland. He was driving. I was
just gonna bring that up, that you had started a new cool style of interview with the purchase of that vehicle.
Yeah,
go ahead.
And I've done two. Only one was arable because somehow my fat fingers screwed up the push record button on my last one. But yeah, man, the Titan interviews are basically what it sounds like. I put somebody, either we're in their Titan or my Titan. I bring my little recorder, and they're driving the truck, and we're just driving around talking. And it was kind of, I knew initially when me and Kevin were going over to Bristol that I was going to do an interview with him, because Kevin had a cargo box company. I don't know what the politically correct term is for a box you put in the back of your vehicle, but yeah, and he was going over to the Red Clay Rally to drop off some sponsorship stuff, and we were, I was like, hey man, I just bought this Titan, let's go. And so on the way back, I was like, he wanted to drive it really bad. And of course, Kevin works alongside Nissan in Franklin, Tennessee, and of course, you work alongside, you always see all the new cars, and he really wanted to drive the truck, so we put him in the driver's seat, and we had a killer interview, man. It was just, and of course, me and Kevin are really good friends, and that was just fun, man. Just for one, riding in my truck because I'm always the driver. And two, just having your friend enjoy the vehicle, and you're just discussing about their life and how that Nissan made them, either enjoyment or whatever. I gotta be honest though, I'm a little, about that same time period, I'm a little jealous because you got to go to Rosh Creek, right?
I did.
What was that for? Because I have a lot of Pennsylvania friends, and they're always, oh, Rosh Creek is this. It's the bomb. It's great. Of course, most of those people have never been to Windrock. Knife in the back. But how was that, man? What was that for the FJ? What was it, Nor'easter?
That was for the FJ Northeaster run.
That's something Rich does, right?
Yes, correct. It was. I had a great time. It was a great event. Got to meet a lot of people that I socialize with on social media and that kind of stuff, and finally got to meet them in person. And some of them I had met previously, but got to meet a lot of new folks and hang out. And
I think
Rouse Creek is.
Oh, let me interrupt you real quick, though, because we didn't touch on this. I think part of that being a great trip for you, or getting to go to there, was because you had something new, didn't you? Because I got something new, but you got something new a little bit before me.
I did. Back in, I believe it was March. I don't even remember, sadly.
I have notes. It was March.
Early March, I think. I picked up it wasn't brand new, obviously, because they don't make them brand new anymore, but I picked up a 2007 FJ Cruiser, and that was, it wasn't its maiden voyage. I had actually drove it up to my folks' place in Nebraska a few weeks before I went to Pennsylvania with it. But it was definitely the first time that I had done any kind of wheeling with it. And I'll tell you what, man, I was I had a good time. I had a good time wheeling it. And I said this in the episode of the podcast that we covered Rich's event up there, that it was fun, but I spent more time worrying about doing any damage to my precious new to me FJ Cruiser than I did wheeling. And man, when you're more concerned about doing damage to your vehicle than you are having fun, it zaps the fun out of it. And, the whole time I mentioned this in the podcast that I spent the whole time thinking, man, I wish I had my 4Runner. And that's for two reasons. One, I'm a lot more comfortable wheeling my 4Runner, and two, I know how to wheel my 4Runner.
Right, and I know that going from the Generation 1 Xterra to Kelly's, my wife's Gen 2, it's like they're just different animals, and I don't want to learn something new. You know, this truck handles different, and I get it.
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, and I don't mean this in a bad way, that I don't care about my 4Runner, but I am gingerly concerned about body damage. I think
your listeners know you care a lot for that vehicle because you've done a lot of work to that vehicle and you filled them in on it this year.
Well, I do a lot of work to it, but you know, when it comes to fixing dents and things, those aren't nearly as critical. So if I can keep it street legal and, you know, keep from destroying too many more taillight lenses, I think I'm going to run the world out of 3rd gen 4Runner taillight lenses if I'm not careful.
I think so too, because I remember you had me pick. I think that was this year too. I think you sent me off to pick one up for you, and it ended up being the wrong one.
Being the wrong one, yeah. Yep.
No, it's like, and then I heard you broke another one. I was like, oh man.
Yeah, I've actually went through 2 more this year, so yeah, I need to slow down on tearing those up. But back to Roush Creek. Roush Creek is a really cool place. Definitely different than what we're accustomed to at Windrock. Just in size and scope, but still some great wheeling. And for the people in that part of the country, those folks up there just don't have a lot of options.
Yeah, they're very restricted, right?
Yes. And you know, in a situation like that, to have Roush Creek there, it's a great place. I honestly, I hope to make it back up to Roush Creek, many more times in my wheeling career. I hope to make it back up to Rich's event, or back up to the FJ Northeaster event.
Yeah, because that's kind of in not the Appalachian Mountains, but I mean it's kind of like the what we would in Tennessee call the plateau. I mean it's kind of near, like it's hilly. It's
oh, absolutely, yes. Dead in the middle of coal country in Pennsylvania. So.
We know how that industry's doing right now, so it's got to be booming. Yeah. Off-road parks everywhere next year. They'll call them the Wall.
Yeah.
Well, I know, and of course you guys kill it, man. I know Rich got invited to Firestone. I think that was around the same time in May, like testing some new tire they're working on. And then, of course, in June, I know Rich went to Expo West, which he was working a booth there, but still. What did he fly out there and drive back, or was that a different trip I'm thinking of?
No, he flew out there and flew back.
Oh, that's right, because I remember that he had to be right back because he had to make your event or something, right?
Yeah, he flew back. He had a busy 2 or 3 weeks or 3 weeks or a month, because he went down to Virginia to the Firestone deal, and then back home, and then got on a plane and flew out west and flew back, and then drove down all the way down to Tennessee for Great Smoky Mountain Trail Ride. So yeah.
Isn't it funny though how our co-hosts have been like that? Because Danny, my August, that's how our August was. I was a little busy, and then Danny was all over the map, man. Well,
it's on one hand, I'm a little envious, and on the other hand, talking to him here and there throughout that process, and knowing just how physically exhausted he was from just the sheer idea of moving around that much, and that's stressful. Trying to coordinate everything and keep everything moving, and that kind of stuff it can be hair raising.
Well, and at the same time, you got to go? You were awarded a nice deal to go test out some new tires, weren't you?
Yeah, that was kind of a long process to get going.
I know. I remember you talking about it.
It kind of started about the first of the year last year. I'm grateful for it. It was just kind of a long process to get going, but I was given the opportunity this year to test out a new set of Yokohama G002 MTs, Yokohama gave me a set of tires, and honestly, it had nothing to do with the podcast. It just had to do with being a long-standing member of the forum Yodatech, and they approached me about it and asked me if I'd be willing to do it, and I said absolutely, and that's turned out to be a really cool deal for me. I wound up with 2 sets of 35-inch tires to figure out what vehicles I wanted to put them on.
Right, because you were expecting the tires a little sooner than what you ended up getting them, and I know you needed tires, and me and you had a few talks about, man, I got to buy some tires, and then you ended up buying some, and then they show up, and
yeah, it was within about 3 weeks. I bought a new set of tires, and then these
and you're running 35s, right? So it's not a cheap tire.
No, not at all. And yeah, like you said, I was expecting these Yokohamas for a couple of months, and again, it was just a long process to get it all together, and I finally broke down and bought a set of Firestone MTs, and they're great tires as well, but got those, and then just a few weeks later, I don't know, 3 weeks or a month later, I think it was about 3 weeks. 3 weeks later, these Yokohamas show up, and so I suddenly had two sets of 35s to pick from. So.
Yeah, your local tire guy was happy to see you. Oh, more tires to put on.
He gives me a hard time all the time anyway. I think I switch tires more than anybody in my county. But
I know that feeling because the local discount tire here, man, and I don't mind giving those guys a shout out here in Murfreesboro because I'm always up their butt asking questions, and I'm a BFG guy, through and through, but I do want to know about, for one, for the podcast, and two, I like knowing about, new grip, and they know me by they don't know me by name, but they know me by Nissan Xterra guy.
Well, I reckon that's a decent thing to be known by.
Well, I'm sure not in your community, but in mine maybe. So around that, Rick, he went to Expo West, and then I think you guys did was it the Smoky Mountain event in June?
In May.
Or yeah. No, or y'all were prepping for something. I don't remember, man. I got my notes all over the place.
Well, I've kind of lost track, and I feel bad that Rich isn't here to fill us in because I'm sure he remembers all of his running. But he had another event not long after that, and I don't remember now what it was. Had to be somewhere for something.
Jeez,
good Lord,
cricket's here, man. Oh man, well, see, they're not on the show tonight, so they can't poke us too bad. Though I'm sure the first of the year, your kickback show, Rich is going to go, hey, whoa, it was right there, Jason. Yeah, man, June was a busy month for me as well. I was all over the map getting ready for my event, and then somehow I thought the Rogue Overland guys contacted me around June, was like, hey, we want to bring you out west, and we want to do a show with you. And somehow me and Danny got it in our heads that it was going to be, I think, in July sometime. And maybe their original plan was for July sometime. But so between prepping for my event and trying to kind of prep for that, I was kind of all over the place. But then Danny does something funny with me. Danny's like, man, because Danny, he's all over the map social media wise. Danny's got his foot in everything. And he was like, dude, I've been talking to these young guys called zebras. And I was like, what? What's the animal zebra? Well, I don't know what. And he's like, no, it's zebra. And I'm like, I don't get your California speak, dude. I'm born in Ohio, raised in Tennessee, man. I'm already screwed up enough, let alone trying to interpret West Coast. And so we had talked to some guys, and I think they were in that area. Where were they from? I want to say New Jersey area, somewhere in there.
Yeah, New Jersey. Yep.
Look, the Toyota guy can tell me. Thanks, Toyota guy. But yeah, and what a great interview, Danny. I let Danny take the reins on that one, and these guys were into drifting, and of course, my show is a little bit of everything, cars and trucks, mostly trucks, but the just like hearing the passion of these young guys, man, how they started drifting. The one guy had an old Z, almost seemed like almost scrapped out, and he rebuilt it in his basement or something, and they didn't have really a garage, and he was out in the winter with tarps over the car, and it just it kind of excited me again. It made me excited for like cars again a little bit, because I remember being that same kind of dumb idiot with the thing I wanted to do out in the garage and work on something, and it was really fun to listen to those guys.
I enjoyed that episode so much, to the point that I've told you this, that those guys have a YouTube channel.
They do. And let me spell that, Jason. It's Z dash BRUHZ.
Yes. That just out of curiosity, after listening to your episode with those guys and your interview with those guys, I actually got a bit addicted for a time, watching their videos, and I still try to keep up with them. It was like you said, it was very inspiring for a guy my age, for middle age, late middle age, however
we're
old
just
you
old, Jason.
Me. I'm pretty far removed from where they're at in life. I'll put it that way. And like you said, thinking back to how passionate I was about whatever hobby I was into at that time, and how willing I was to be out in the snow and in the wind and the rain to work on my junk and get it ready to go for whatever, all the stuff that I would find one excuse after another not to do now. It was really cool to see these guys, and the main guy, and I apologize, I can't remember his name right off the top of my head, but the guy that's kind of behind it with the Red Z, seeing his progression after he got the car running, and the first time he took it out to the track and tried to drift with it, and it just couldn't quite get it figured out.
Right.
And folks, I know nothing about drifting, so this was.
Well, you don't take your 18-wheeler out and just slide it around the snow or anything?
Not intentionally, no. No. But it was really cool to just kind of follow along and watch him progress and get better, and make upgrades to the car and make it perform the way he wanted it to, and that kind of stuff. I didn't understand a lot of it, and some of it didn't make sense and that kind of stuff, but if it had it not been for hearing those guys on your podcast and the interview that you guys did with them, I would have never been introduced to it, and I do enjoy watching the videos. So. Right,
yeah, and they, of course, they're just homegrown videos they're doing, and they're fun to watch. The biggest thing for that interview for me was most, when you try to talk to people about podcasting, most people don't have, I mean, you do your best to explain what it is and kind of, but I don't know if you've ever had this happen, but people always think it's sort of a TV show that they're going to do through the internet. And I mean, I know there are video podcasts, but those guys had it all. Dude, they were in their backyard. They had their Z, and I think it was a RX-7. No, there was two Zs, I believe, sitting there in the background. They had their sponsor, the guy that does a lot of sponsorship for them. His logo, he had his banner in the middle, and they had this table set up, and the cars were in the background, and they even had like lights shining. I mean, it was like, I was so inspired by their little production they had ready to go for their big moment, and then me and Danny, we're, of course, I kind of had an idea what Danny was thinking of, like, well, I don't know what they set all this up for us, but thanks. But at the end of that episode, I got him to, or me or Danny got him to start their cars, man, and get to rev them, them little rice rockets, and that was fun, man. And they were grinning because they were, they knew their cars were being recorded for the show.
Well, and to add to that a little bit, one of the cars that was in that shot for my listeners, there's one guy in that group. The majority of them are Nissan guys, but there is one guy in that group that has a Lexus.
Oh, he does. So, that's right. What did they call those? LC something or?
I don't. I'm not a Lexus car guy.
But he was drifting it, and it's an automatic. I don't know. I don't know how you do that.
I don't know how he does it either. But it's one of the V8 Lexus cars. So for those of you that are more familiar with what the Lexus cars are than I am, that whatever it is, that's what he's got. So
yeah, that was awesome, man. But you got to interview a few or bigger names, and I don't know Toyota that well, so I say it's a bigger name. But a guy that used to be with Toy Tech, what was his name?
Dylan Ewald. Yeah, we have had just a ton of great interviews this year. Not that we didn't, in year one of the podcast, but this year we've been able to get just a ton of great people on, and Dylan was right in that mix. I felt terrible that I had recorded that interview with Dylan, and it was, oh God, it was a couple of months. Things had completely changed in his life by the time I was able to put the interview out. He had moved back across the country from the East Coast to Colorado and changed jobs again. And,
so that's right. He moved from Colorado east, right?
Yes.
So, which has got to be a disappointment from being in the land of off-roading to go. I mean, we have it on the East Coast, but from just all this open public land confined to a park.
Right. Well, I think for him, it wasn't. I think he was looking at it differently. He was originally from the East Coast and had moved to Colorado and kind of gotten spoiled by Colorado. And on one hand, I think he was looking forward to moving back east and being around family and that kind of stuff. And then once he got there, he realized as bad as it may sound, and Dylan, if you're listening, I don't mean this in a bad way, but maybe that Colorado maybe outweighed family time, maybe.
Right.
But I know he was happy to and is happy to be back in Colorado. So.
Well, did he end up back at Toy Tech or?
No, he is working for Earth Roamer.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's big time, man.
Yeah, he is still within the off-road community, and Dylan is a great guy. I hope that the listeners got something out of that interview. Dylan has, for me personally, has answered tons of questions, and I probably pester the guy more than I should with different stuff, but he is just he's always willing to help, and just a plethora of knowledge.
Right. Well, it's a small world, dude, because I got to meet him about 2 years ago. I don't know if I ever told you that.
He's a friend of a mutual friend of ours.
Yeah, Corey Sane with Insane Fab, man. And it was funny because he turboed that truck or something, right? His
yes.
So I remember him bringing turbos when me and my buddy JR drove out there. November, I don't know, 14 or 15, whenever it was. Yeah, I remember seeing him bringing one of the turbos over to Corey. He was showing him that stuff, man. And I always meant to bring that up to you of like what a small world it is that you're talking with people probably maybe on a weekly basis about parts or whatever, and then I got to meet the guy. Which you ended up getting to meet him too at Rosh Creek.
Yeah, oddly enough, for him being a Colorado guy and being very well known out in the Colorado scene, when I had the opportunity to meet him, it was at the FJ Northeaster event up there at Rosh Creek in April. So, yeah, it worked out really, really cool that way, because I'm hoping to get out to Colorado, but I'm not sure when it's gonna take place. I know Dylan keeps pestering me to get out and do some wheeling. But
you drive close to it all the time.
Yeah.
Can't you just shove one of your trucks in the back of a rig sometime?
I've been hit up about that more times than I care to remember, and I wish that was an option, because I get really close to a lot of places, and I just don't ever get to enjoy them.
Well, you know what kills me about of course you guys want to listen to the interview with Dylan, that was episode 38 for Jason, but if you guys were killing it that month, man, in July, because you had 3 episodes that month, and normally me and Danny, we try to get 2 out. We struggle with 1 sometimes, but you guys started putting like 3 out. I was like, Jason, slow down, dude.
Well, what it boiled down to was I had several interviews in the can, and like I said with Dylan's, I had sat on it for so long that I didn't want to just scrap the interview, and I knew I had to do something with it,
right,
or it was just going to be either have to be redone or something to be updated. And I probably should have done that anyway, but I just wanted to get some interviews,
right,
that I already had done, right, out. So it wasn't so much trying to pump out episodes. It was just a matter of wanting to get some of these interviews that I really enjoyed doing, and I thought they were really good interviews. I just wanted to get them out where folks could listen to them. So.
Well, I know for my show, July was like we started. That's when we started going about 1 episode a month, and only because like poor Dan started fostering something happened to friends or something, and he ended up fostering a fairly newborn baby around that time. So like for far as our show, man, we got to talk to the Rogue guys about going to their trip, and my next show was the Rogue trip. So you guys are out there killing it with 3 episodes that month, and I'm like squeaking to find some scraps on the floor to talk about.
Well, I think that with the cool thing about podcasts and the cool thing about our listeners, I think, between our 2 shows is they appreciate the content. I'm sure that all of them would appreciate more, but they're happy that there's a show just for them,
right?
You know, just for the Nissan crowd, and in my case, just for the Toyota crowd. We both know that there are a ton of off-road style podcasts available if you want to just listen to somebody talk about general off-roading and that kind of stuff. And some of them are extremely Jeep biased and that kind of stuff, and that's fine. You know, I mean, everybody's got their thing, but for me, and I've said this many times, as a podcast consumer, that's what drove me to want to do the Toyota Trucks and Trails podcast. Was I felt like the Toyota community needed something or deserved something just specifically for the Toyota, and that's where it all started. And I think that I think our listeners both are just happy to get episodes. So.
Well, they better be, damn it.
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, this month is going to be a slow month for us. So.
Clearly, we're doing a year in review, Jason.
Well,
no, we've been wanting to do this anyways.
Rich and I had some other plans. The listeners of our show, you know, we've talked about different things, and Rich has been kind of under the weather the past few weeks, and had a lot going on and that kind of stuff, and we just haven't been able to get together to get anything done. And David and I wanted to do this one, so we decided to do it together and just handle it this way. So.
That's right, and management said we could do it, so.
Right.
AKA the wives. But yeah, you know, August, like for me, once again, my event's always in September, so usually you don't hear much about, I mean, we'll do the podcast, but for what I do, you don't hear a lot from me in August. I'm probably I'm going to do some kind of sneaky run over at Windrock to see what the park's looking like for my event, or I'm just getting ready, gearing up for my event. And those that have done events know, like, they may seem seamless sometimes and easy, but I get a lot of gray hairs in August. And part of my gray hairs this August was when the Rogue guys called me to go on a trip, man. I I had to fly out to Vegas, which I'd never been to Vegas before, so that was in itself was kind of exciting. It's amazing when you get off the airplane and you're expecting a couple slot machines, and no, there's pit bosses and there's a whole casino right as soon as you get off the plane, and I'm like, great, what am I in for now? And they pick me up, and we head through Arizona, Utah to Colorado. I think that's right. Yeah, so Nevada, Arizona, Utah, and Colorado, and we literally drove from Arizona to almost Grand Junction in Colorado. So we hoofed in some miles because my flight didn't get in till I want to say 2 that day, 2 Vegas time. And man, I think I'd been up since about my time, Central Time, probably 5 a.m. So I was like adjusting to a little bit of time difference, and then the stress of the trip. Flying's never easy. You get there and you're meeting, of course, Danny was there. I knew Danny, but you're meeting all these new people. And of course I knew the Savachi and a few of the guys, and just instant camaraderie, man. We're on the ham radios, just back and forth, everybody just going down the highway. And I think it was like 12 rigs, Toyota and Nissans in that group. And I know there was a 4Runner and there was an FJ, and I think maybe 2. I think in the end there was a Tacoma that ended up being with us too. But yeah, man, and we like pulled in, and of course, Jason, I know I'm rambling here a little bit, but what we think of overland here on the East Coast is nothing like probably real overlanding, man.
Absolutely not. Absolutely.
When you're packing everything that you need, because especially out west, there is not a lot of stops in between, every couple 100 miles maybe, but you're never too far away from a Walmart. But you better be prepared when you're camping out in the middle of Utah. I remember crossing, all I knew about where we were camping that night was we got off the highway, and I think it was on 70. We get off the highway, we go over some cattle gates instantly, and we head down this old road for maybe 5 miles, and then it's like, okay, we're camping right here. And I'm like, where? And it was in a cow pasture. And just of course, everybody was worn out that night, but we crashed pretty quick, and then we went on to our adventure. And I got to do a Black Bear Pass and Imogene Pass, and just see Silverton and all these places around Uray that, for off-roaders, those are kind of dream places. I know Moab and the Rubicon are big things, but you're way up there. I was 14,000 feet in the air. That was pretty thrilling.
You guys, I mean, that episode that you guys did while you were on that trip, and the different times that you recorded. I know some of it you and Danny recorded just going down the road, and you recorded it several different times and then kind of compiled it all together into one episode. But you guys did a fantastic job of bringing the listener into what you were doing, I thought. I mean, for you and Danny, there was your normal Danny and Dave conversation and normal Danny and Dave interaction. So, that wasn't lacking either. But you also like I said, did a fantastic job of making the listener feel like they were a part of what was going on, or I did anyway.
Right.
Definitely one of my favorite interviews, or one of my favorite episodes, pardon me, that you guys did this year.
Well, it's probably my favorite episode to do. Other than I'm traveling without, normally me and Kelly are side by side when we travel, so that was always it's scary and fun traveling by yourself like that, but then meeting all these people and just exploring a way that I've never done before. But then, of course, me and Danny just talking, just kind of BSing as we're going down the road, and then our final night, I know they did an extra day that we didn't do. We were just outside of Moab at our campground, and just we set up the podcast gear. I had a couple mics, Danny had a mic, I had a mic, and we were around a fire pit, man, and it was just the scene was crazy because, you always see these pictures of the Milky Way and stuff people take, and you're like, oh, I don't know how they did that, but they must have been a crazy camera. Dude, you get out there where there's no light, and you're just looking at all these thousands and thousands of stars you see, and then you can make out the Milky Way galaxy, and it dawned on me that I'm out where nobody has probably ever recorded anything like this before. And I'm with a bunch of just great people. That road crew was a special crew, and I'm just doing a fire pit podcast, and I listen to quite a few, and I've never heard any fire pit podcasts. I don't know. Maybe you have, but
it was a very, very cool. Me living through it vicariously, and really wishing that, really wishing I could have been a part of it and been there in person. Like I said, you guys did a fantastic job of bringing the fun to the listeners, and I'm somewhat envious that you were able to partake in that kind of trip this year. I'm on one hand, I'm envious, and on the other, I'm very proud for you that you got to do it and got to experience it, that kind of stuff. So,
well, we both get, this year's been big highlights for both of us. Whether it be the trips like that I get to do, or just you guys seem to work. I got to travel. Me and Danny got to travel a little bit. You guys got the epic interviews, man. And there's, for the off-road community, there was one guy in the late 70s and 80s that just dominated everything, man. He really he took maybe the early off-roading, the kind of Jeepers. He really brought them into maybe a little more classy light. He was a Toyota guy, so I mean, clearly he was going to be on your show at some point. But he was the Iron Man. Give us some background on this, Jason, because I wouldn't have known how you ever get a hold of Ivan Stewart, or maybe his people contacted you guys. I don't know, but that dude, if there's a Mount Rushmore of off-roading, that dude is our George Washington for off-roading in my eyes.
Definitely an icon in the off-road community, and probably more specifically within the Toyota community. That interview is something that not only is a highlight for the podcast this year, but something that the fact that I had the opportunity to sit down for an hour or so and talk to Ivan Stewart on the phone.
Yeah, because you were for when 3 weeks before, me and you were talking, and you were like, how do I approach this interview? Because that's the most prepared I've ever seen you, like, really dig down, and I've got to be right for this.
Well, I felt like, Ivan Stewart's been interviewed thousands of times in his lifetime, and little old me, I'm not an interviewer. I don't.
Oh, don't cut. You do great with interviewing. Don't cut yourself short.
Well, it's not something that I consider a skill set. I'll put it that way. But yeah, I wanted that to. I knew going into it, or I felt going into it, that it was something that I just should approach differently, and was something that was going to be very special to not just the podcast, but to me personally. And I wanted it to. I wanted to come across and be as flawless as possible, and just wanted to be as prepared as I could for it. I wouldn't. I know I talked about, within that episode that interview appeared in, that it was a lot of work. It was a lot of emailing and that kind of stuff, and that's just what it takes to get somebody that's as busy as that man is,
right,
to get scheduled, to be able to sit down. But for all intents and purposes, I sent an email. It went to his website, went to his personal website, and on his website there's a contact me tab, and clicked on that and sent an email, and from the very first email forward, of course, I was dealing with. He has somebody that handles scheduling and that kind of stuff for him for stuff like that, and I was dealing with that individual. But from the very beginning, from the very first email back, Ivan would be more than happy to do this, and it was just really encouraging to have somebody of that stature and that standing within the off-road community and the Toyota community be willing to pay our little podcast a few minutes worth of attention. So
and nothing says you're a Toyota off-road podcast and makes you more legitimate than Ivan Stewart being on your show, man. I mean, like I said, if there's a Mount Rushmore, he's the first guy on it, especially for you were saying Toyota, but I've been a Nissan guy for 25 years or more. And, I played that silly game. I remember going to the local Walmart when they had what was it called? Off-Road, Ivan Stewart's Off-Road or something like that. And you played that game. And, of course, back in the 80s, the stadium racing was really big. And I remember watching that on ESPN or whatever it came on. It always reminded, like, what is it in L.A.? What's the stadium in L.A.? The Coliseum. I always remember seeing them jump down the stairs when they would go do the thing, and they would climb up the stairs, and they would go outside of the Coliseum for a minute, and then they would come in and jump when they were going towards the finish line. And I remember just seeing him just dominate those races like crazy.
Yeah, I've been a Toyota guy for several years, not as long as a lot of people in this community by far, but I knew who Ivan Stewart was, like you, when I was a kid. And I knew that he represented Toyotas when I was a kid. I may not have been as big a fan of Toyotas back in those days, but I was definitely familiar with who Ivan Stewart was. So,
I think he's single. I know Toyota, especially mid-sized trucks and small trucks, they dominate the sales, and I could probably say that he is almost 100% responsible for why Toyota does so well in the small trucks. I mean, if they haven't made him a billionaire from just royalties off of that, they should.
Yeah, we talked about that in the interview, and Ivan, rightly so, definitely takes maybe not personal credit. The guy is a very humble guy, and definitely pays tribute where it's due to his fellow teammates and the crew and that kind of stuff that was always there with him. But the fact that Toyota was involved in racing and that whole team, him included,
right,
were able to dominate it, like you said, dominate the series the way that they were for so many years, that definitely played a role in where Toyota is at right now with their share of the market, especially in the small truck market.
Well, when you told me you were getting that interview, the only thing what I could think about, of course, he's getting older, but Expedition Overland guys last season, they were down in Baja somewhere, and Ivan's got a house down that way, and of course they got to go talk to him, and they were with some Toyota research guy, some of the TRD program guy, and he took him down to meet Ivan and stuff, and just getting to see him like that. And then I'm like, man, freaking A, one of my good friends is interviewing this guy. It was a highlight for me, man, and just me helping you get the show going, and you taking the show to places that I'll never get to take mine. And then you're interviewing royalty of off-roading, man. I mean, I was so happy because you sent me that interview before, and I'm sitting there and I called Danny and I was like, Danny, and I think you probably don't know it. I shared it with Danny, the interview. And I was like, Danny, this SOB, man, we have nobody like this who we can talk to, I mean, there's the drift world. Like we were supposed to talk to one of the big drifters, and I'm going to call him a douchebag. The dude bailed on us at the last minute. And after I paid a lot of money to promote that, and the douchebag did me that way. But yeah, it just kills me that you got to do royalty. And then like 2 months later, you're getting royalty again, man, within the off-road community. Who was the biggest interview towards the end of the year you got to talk to?
Well, I would have to say it was probably, Marlon Tchaikovsky from Marlin Crawler, which was again, it was another absolute awesome opportunity. Not just to be able to speak to Marlon, but just a few episodes before that, I had the opportunity to talk to his son Mike, who is now the president of Marlin Crawler and kind of heading up the company, and both of those conversations were amazing. But getting to meet Marlon in person.
Oh, that's right. You got to meet him, right?
Yeah. I was able to attend Southern Cruiser Crawl in October of this year, and down in Hot Springs, Arkansas, which that in itself was a big deal to me, because Hot Springs is a place that I've wanted to wheel for since I got into off-roading. You know, it used to be Superlift Off-Road Park, and it was one of the most well-known parks in the country.
Right.
And just kind of legendary in that aspect, and somewhere that I've always wanted to go check out. And then for Marlon to be there and for him to be willing to sit down and just chat for a while. And I'll tell you what, you could not ask for somebody that is that popular within the community. You couldn't ask for a nicer guy. Just a great guy all the way around. I mean,
right.
not just a great business and has done awesome things for the Toyota community and that kind of stuff, but just a great guy.
No, and your interview definitely reflected that. And the one thing, because let's see, I think I took over editing your show in September and doing some audio production for you. So I think Mike was the first thing I did. So listening to that interview, that one thing that family does is they like to talk.
They have got talking down pat.
They do.
Absolutely. And I mean no diss to either one of them. I know
right.
Mike still listens to the podcast. So Mike, if you hear this, that is not a diss to you or your dad, either one, but you guys got talking figured out.
Right. Where you know, you would have thought Ivan Stewart, of course, Ivan Stewart, he knew how to talk politically correct shop. These guys just like to talk, man, and it was fun. And there was a couple things, like I just hated it, you know, like for time constraints, you just have to edit some of the interviews, and I was just like, well, I kind of hate to, because I think that one show of yours was almost 3 hours long.
Right.
And I was like, man, I hate to chop some of this, but yeah, and of course I don't have the connection to these guys like you do, you know. My connection would be like Meisner or somebody in my community that I feel like is at that level, but you know, not at your level of off-roading. But yeah, just these guys, it was amazing. They both, you know, one remembered some things differently than the other, and they would tell you about it a little bit, but they know, like they both know how to sell their product.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, me being part of the Toyota community, I always learn something when I talk to these folks and that kind of stuff. But I probably learned more about just the company Marlin Crawler from talking to those two guys than, I mean, again, I learned something from everybody that I interviewed for sure. But just about the company Marlin Crawler, I probably learned more about that company talking to those two guys than any company that or any other interview that I've done.
Well, and they did special, you know, he's done something special for your community, you know. Not everybody makes the stuff they're making, nor especially at the time they started doing it was really in, you know, to making those special parts.
You know, I was just sitting thinking the other day. I always go back and let my interviews or let my episodes sit for a few days before I listen to them. But I do go back and listen to all my episodes. And I listened to that interview with Marlon. And when it was done, I was just driving down the road, reflecting a little bit and thinking to myself, what kind of person thinks to even approach something like that? I'm not that type of person.
Right.
I am so grateful that I love doing fab work. I talk about that all the time on the show. You know, I building sliders and bumpers and that kind of stuff. I'm not good at it. I don't pretend to be, but I enjoy the work. But for somebody to want something so bad that they're just willing to completely re-engineer something,
right?
You know, and basically start from scratch. And you know, Marlon admits that he was basically using somebody else's idea and just kind of refined it and made it better and made it work. In his opinion, made it work better. But even at that, I'm not the guy that would you know, dig into it deep enough to figure out, hey, somebody in Iceland is already doing this. Let's see if we can do it here in the States. Right. I'm just not that guy. So, you know, just in that aspect alone, Marlon is a pretty fascinating guy to me. And anybody else that does that kind of stuff, I think it's awesome.
Well, you also kind of ended up November. You were talking to the Rogue guys who we were just talking about, and of course, you know, the one guy owns a Nissan Xterra, a 2000 Nissan Xterra, but he also owns a brand new Tacoma, Nick Savacci. How did those guys, you end up they treating you?
You know, I like I said, I so enjoyed your conversation with those guys and listening to that episode that you guys did about your trip with them, and then you kind of put Nick and I in touch, and just sitting down having a conversation with him. I hope that my listeners didn't just kind of write that off because it wasn't 100% Toyota specific, I guess. I hope that they got something out of it, and that they take the time to check out what Rogue Overland's doing. And especially if there's listeners out in that part of the country that are into that kind of stuff and you know, looking for somebody to hook up with and do some cool trips, because it seems to me like those guys are doing it the right way. Mm-hmm. And
yeah, they're not one of these wannabe overland clubs that just are out there hoping that Toyota will give them a new Tacoma or whoever is going to give them a new something. You know, I have a small rant of the overland guys, of how they're kind of the wannabe clubs are sometimes ruining the industry or the sponsorship part of it. They're hurting events more than they're helping broaden the Toyotas or whoever's base.
Yeah, we Rich and I actually did an episode about that earlier this year. It's something that he and I, both of us, you know, working with our own events, and you fall into that mix in the Nissan community as well. And I know that you and Danny got into that. I really liked the wording that you and Danny used of support those that support us. That's one side of it, and then like you said, there are so many people out there. I don't know if people realize just, you know, how many events there are taking place, and how few companies there are to support events. And
well, I know for like and Nissan, for Nissan Off-Road, man, it's like you've got my event here on the East Coast that's you know, all Nissan Off-Road. The Xterra guys have one up at Rosh Creek called the East Coast Xterra Challenge, and then you've got Gone Moab out in the West Coast, and those are kind of that's the big events for us. And of course, just even by our listenership, I can tell the difference, you know, when we talk about numbers of how many listeners you have versus I have, and that's kind of how the events and stuff go too, is about the same percentage. And for, like, you know, I know what Toyota, you guys have a good 5 or 6 big events, right?
At least that, yeah.
For all those guys, and you guys, like your raffles, I know like that your event does, you guys bring in a lot of product. When you start all these little wannabe overland guys, you know, that, and I say, I don't mean that disrespectful. All you guys out there that stick a sticker on your truck and you're hoping to get sponsorship for your truck, which I don't blame you, because I've made connections through my business and I have sponsorship deals. But, you know, think about if you're taking on a sponsorship, do what you say you're going to do. You know, if I'm going to blast you out on social media, or I'm going to make a YouTube video, please do it, man, because even though times are good economy wise, I know just talking through some of the manufacturers that make, you know, items that offer the Overland guys like, they see anything in their emails anymore that says Overland, it's right in the spam. It's they're not looking at it because there's so many of them now.
Yeah, I appreciate people's approach, and I understand. I'm with you. I understand why they're doing it, and everybody wants to do their own thing, and that's fine. But the waters have definitely gotten muddied, I guess.
Right.
And it's just making it tough for long running events like Great Smoky Mountain Trail Ride or your event. You know, Windrock you've been doing that event, what, 8 years?
This will be a year 8.
It's hard for established events to get these folks to come in, and everybody likes to go to an event, you know, and have a nice big raffle and that kind of stuff. That's always kind of a key part of any event. And in order for that to happen, you know, things need to thin out a little bit,
right?
And everybody has to have something to offer.
Well, and I know for us, we almost with our admission fee are about break even. So for the event to kind of make any money and to do charitable things, the raffles where that all comes from. And yeah, and like you're saying, you know, it gets harder and harder to do that. But and I feel like I've diverted us from our original idea here. But definitely you want to start an Overland group, man. Be professional, act professional, and treat your sponsors definitely professional.
Absolutely. And this may be a slight diversion from what we started out doing here, but it you know, obviously it's something that you and I and I know, you know, like I said, you and Danny have talked about it on your show. Rich and I have talked about it on our show. It's something that we all feel passionate about, and we're passionate about it because it's something that's important. So
definitely. So as we round third here, Jason, we've both had incredible years, man. And I don't know, other than, you know, I have a benchmark for me. I'm getting to Australia somehow. I'm taking the podcast because that's where, for the Nissan Toyota rivalry, I have a little bit of it's not 50-50, but it's a lot better than it is in the States as far as the rivalry goes. Nissan is fairly big in Australia. So I'm that's kind of my benchmark. I doubt it's going to happen next year unless some Nissan dealership in Australia, who I do have listeners down there, would like to fund Dave and Danny's trip. That would be let's see, that'll be the Nissan Nation podcast at gmail.com. And let's talk. but I that's kind of I've set a few benchmarks, and I've hit my benchmarks within the 3 years I've been doing my show. And kind of what's a reachable goal for you think, for year 3 for you?
For 2018, I have some kind of basic goals. The first being just to continue to see some steady growth for the podcast. Hopefully keep bringing on, you know, new listeners and kind of keep expanding things to be more encompassing within the Toyota community. For the show itself, some goals that I have are, I really want to get out to some events. Maybe, you know, I'm hoping to make it out to the West Coast to some kind of an event out there. I don't know whether that would happen. At least make it out to Colorado or you know, that far west anyway to an event and kind of meet up with some people out there and share what we're doing and put some faces to names and meet some people that we've talked to on the show and that kind of stuff is definitely on the agenda for this coming year.
Well, as a fan of your show, man, I can't wait to kind of see what you bring to not only the Toyota world, but to the off-road world. Like I said, you guys do a bunch of tech stuff that's very informative, and I've enjoyed listening. It's stuff that I didn't think. I've honestly, I've seen some stuff that, like, the high or whatever the description on the podcast, I'm like, oh no, man, I don't know how I'm going to follow along with this. But you guys do such a great job of when you're talking tech that it's very, descriptive, but yet not the nuts and bolts. It's like, it's entertaining. And so I'm excited to see you guys, where you guys take that, coming up.
Well, I appreciate that. And that's something else that this year I say it was me doing it, got a little bit interview centric. We done a ton of interviews throughout 2017, and I enjoyed each and every one of them. And thank you to each and every person that sat down and gave us some time for an interview. And there's going to be more of that in 2018. But I hope throughout the year for Rich and I to do some more just picking a topic and just him and I researching it a little bit and digging into it and just keep things a little more Toyota specific and just him and I covering topics.
Right.
Anybody that listens to us knows that we like to talk. We just need a direction to go. So.
Well, yeah, and that goes, like, I know I've had somebody in my ear constantly going, hey, man, why don't you do some history of Nissan? I keep getting, I don't know who that guy is that keeps telling me that, but we've got that coming up. I'm definitely going to Dan Carlin it a little bit in a hardcore history, a little bit of Nissan.
Well, I know one guy that's really, really looking forward to that. He's kind of been in my ear too. So I look forward to you guys getting into that.
Right. Cause I know you guys have done that a little bit. Yeah. I know with the history of the Land Cruiser and stuff like that. And you've had some guests on that were very Land Cruiser specific. And I've learned one thing from your show: Land Cruiser guys and FJ guys and just Tundra guys and Tacoma guys, like, they don't, Land Cruiser guys, like, no. I'm my own guy, man. We definitely have, Rich and I have touched on this topic, in many episodes within the first year and some this year. There seems to be some division within between the Toyota Land Cruiser world and the Toyota 4x4 world. And part of my goal starting this podcast was to help bridge that gap. I don't know how good a job I'm doing, but hopefully we're walking the tightrope anyway, and you better get some
information there to both.
Get some max tracks there, buddy, and get in those holes and fill those holes a little bit.
Right. That's our goal, and I enjoy both. The group of guys that I wheel with are primarily Land Cruiser guys. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of the odd man out, being just a 4Runner FJ Cruiser guy. Definitely an IFS guy. I'm out of our core group, I'm the only one that's an IFS guy, and I've brought that small group around to see that I'm not pure evil and just going to be the downfall of the Toyota brand. So if it can happen within my small core group, maybe we can start a countrywide trend here in the U.S. and it'll grow from there.
Well, I definitely know, being the Xterra crowd to the Frontier truck crowd is very similar. They it's hard to get those two parties together, even though one will take their SUV and wheel it a little bit, and sometimes the other likes to mall crawl it a little bit. So I'm not going to pick on the Frontier guys because I wheeled the piss out of mine. but yeah, it's definitely that way in the Nissan world too. And then, if you're lucky enough to have a patrol, then you're in a whole different, but that's probably that Land Cruiser crowd that you guys deal with. They're in their own world, man.
Well, it's an understandable thing. I don't think a lot of people in the Toyota community, in the Toyota 4x4 community, understand why the guys in the Land Cruiser community kind of feel the way they do. For a long time, just owning being willing to wheel a Land Cruiser was looked down upon. They were, for as awesome a vehicle as they were really looked down upon. And then about the time the mini truck come around and people started seeing some real value in Toyota 4x4s, there's guys that have been wheeling Land Cruisers for years before that always knew they were great vehicles. And then it seemed like, kind of a fad deal or a trend deal for everybody to get into wheeling Toyotas. And those guys kind of felt like, hey, we've been here all along, kind of trying to defend this brand. Who are all these new guys to come in here and act like they've been a part of it for years. So
right. Well, so to kind of wrap this up on my end, man, I want to say I could not have had this kind of year without some partners of Niztec lifts, White Knuckle Off Road. If you need sliders, they do them for your Toyota too. Give John and those guys at, I think it's white-knuckle-offroad.com. or Off-Road Products. Either way, I want to say I couldn't have done everything I've done this year without those guys, without Hips Designs, Lifestyle Off-Road, who helps both shows. I know. I don't think I got anybody else this year. The events everywhere we've been has treated us great, from whether it's dealing with the guys that help us get the stuff for Gone Moab set up. Of course, Windrock, those guys treat me awesome. So I want to pat those guys on the back and say a big thank you. Car guys, we're coming, Nissan-wise. We're coming out to get you. We'll start doing some cars and coffee and stuff like that. Jason, you got anybody you want to kind of give a big shout out to?
Absolutely. First, I want to thank all of our listeners, all the ones that have been there from the beginning and stuck with us for the past couple of years. I hope you continue to find something through 2018 to keep bringing you back. To all the new listeners, thank you for finding us however you have. And,
yes,
and
amen.
We're glad to have you on board. Thanks also to number one, Steve Springs at Southeast Overland. Rich and I talk about Steve constantly. And it's for good reason. Steve has been behind the podcast from the very beginning, and his support is always greatly appreciated. Cruiser Gear that stepped up this year and helped us out a little bit. Thank you for your support. All the other people that have stepped up with short sponsorships and that kind of stuff. It's all appreciated.
Yeah, and definitely, and to anybody listening out there that want to sponsor either of our shows, man, you can get us at NissanNationPodcast.com. What are your ToyotaTrucksandTrails.com?
Yeah.
If you're interested in doing some cross promotion, let us know. You can get us at DRB and KGB Media on Facebook, social medias and stuff. We can point you in the right direction for each show. Whatever, and hey man, if you do something in your garage and it's a great product, let's talk to you, because I like dealing with the little guy and helping promote the little guy, and don't feel like you've only got a couple dollars to spend. Hey man, it's a free economy, buddy. I like money too.
We, when I started this podcast, that's, and anytime I approach interviews, that's what it's, that's my first thing I say is I do this to help support people that are doing cool stuff within the Toyota community and get the word out about what they're doing. So if there's any listeners out there that, if you have a local company that does something Toyota specific, or for David, if there's somebody out there doing something that kind of favors Nissans or whatever, get a hold of either one of us and let us know or whatever, and we'll reach out to those folks and see if we can get them on our individual podcasts and do what we can for them. I don't want to speak for you, David, but I think that's part of what your goal is too.
No, definitely. And if you make something that meets both of our vehicles' needs, we don't want to talk to you at all, because we don't get along. And just Nissan needs to be Nissan, Toyota be Toyota. Don't make anything in between. So Smitty built, kiss my ass. You're not in we're not in them tweeners. No, I'm playing. And yeah, and once again to I'm fueled by Monster. If you want to throw a case of Monster my way, I don't know what Jason drinks. I think Jason drinks a lot of coffee over there on the road. So
Diet Mountain Dew.
Diet Mountain Dew. So come on, PepsiCo.
Yeah, I'm game for that.
That's right, man. Jump on board. We will slut ourselves out for you guys. there is nothing you can't do that we won't help with. But so from everybody here at the Nissan Nation podcast, my buddy over there, Jason Hoffman, who helped do this show, Kelly, my wife, who does the intros and keeps me sane, one of my best friends, Danny, there on the West Coast, man, I could not do this without you. My buddy JR, who helped get us some music and stuff. Whoever it is, I want to say thank you. And Jason, I'm going to let you take this one out. So from everybody here at the Nissan Nation podcast, what are we, Jason?
We are out.
Peace, everybody.